game for C9.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back for our second series of the day here on twitch.tv/FaceItTV. A reminder, pull up twitch.tv/Academy if you haven't already and watch all the Academy action. But regardless, we got another series ahead of us with Dignitas Academy and TSM Academy taking to the Rift. I do want to take a quick moment, though, to say congratulations to FlyQuest for taking that victory against CLG in the previous series. That was actually pretty slick, finding that 1-1. Their dream to the top 6 is still technically alive. They actually could, as long as you go 3-1 in the next couple series here, make that run.
And as long as Dig loses here.
I was about to say,
A Dig loss here would help.
If they go 5-1, it'll make it a little bit easier. But 4-2, that's not in their hands anymore.
Sure. Well, let's bring our attention then to that matchup ahead of us, because this could be big for Dignitas Academy's run through their kind of top 6 journey. They are on the cusp. They're technically right behind 100 Thieves. Cubby, what does Dignitas need to do to get this?
Some faces. We got some wonderful faces now.
Yeah,
Dig,
they look great.
It's great.
I think that Dignitas, tied 6th at the moment, they really do control their own destiny. Especially, I know that our very last match of Super Week is Dig versus 100 Thieves. They're both tied for 6 at the moment. But I think that this is a decent opportunity for Dig, to try and bounce back in this one, because I think that for Dig, their matches, Immortals, 100 Thieves coming up next as well the next 2 days. That is the team that is 1 win ahead of them and then tied with them in the standings. So I think that Dig needs a 2-0 here against TSM, who are at the bottom, and Dignitas need to set themselves up for success in the next couple days. And my eyes, when it comes to all that, we've talked about him so much throughout the split, but it really is XU. I think he's been changing up his playstyle a little bit, playing more of the Hecarim and the Udyr, and I think that's really going to come onto his shoulders to see if he can get his team started and push his team across the finish line in a lot of these games.
Yeah, quick update. It is actually, of course, the lower third, I think, was a little off. TSM, then Immortals, and then, like you said, 100 Thieves to close it out. That's not the hardest strength of schedule for Dignitas Academy going forward. They could realistically look at this week and say, hey, we can 6-0 this week, or at least have a really good record going into that 100 Thieves match. Like you said, controlling their destiny. But who's their opponent today, Magical?
Yeah, I was going to say, but the dream is still alive. The Doctor Strange, one possibility out of 14 million
Literally
is still
one.
there.
It literally is one possibility.
It is one possibility for TSM. If they win every game in this Super Week, they still have a hope, a very small hope, a hope nonetheless, of making it into the top 6. And when you look at their opponents, not the easiest, I'll be honest. It's not too terribly easy.
It would legitimately be a miracle run here. As we take a look at the TSM roster, let's talk about the match.
Again,
yeah, it's also to show off the faces of the Academy players on the broadcast here. We'll have this going through Proving Grounds as well into next week. But Magical, when we look at TSM Academy, where's their strengths? How do we actually expect them to make that kind of run?
Viper.
Yes. Say it again for those in the back that missed it.
Yeah, Viper.
Well, you're supposed to get louder when you do it, but all right. Yeah.
Fine, Viper!
There you go.
Is that better?
Viper is the one that's kind of 1v9ing right now on this team.
That really is, honestly. Viper has been playing out of his mind in a lot of these games, and a lot of the successes TSM have had are off the back of him. But I love also seeing, him play his classic Riven in some of the games where he busts that out. He's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to hard carry these games. I'm going to be the one who's really in control of the destiny for my team. And when we look at TSM, they do put a lot. They have a lot of faith in Viper to be that person that can carry them through the finish line. Kind of like what we saw with CLG with Dokla. It's a very similar thing.
Yeah.
The only thing with TSM is fixing some of those communication issues that we've seen in the past. And honestly, they've done that recently.
Yeah, and I know that I think the Viper has actually been one of the players that, has kind of flown under the radar for us. I think he's been performing really well throughout the entire split. I think the real reason, though, that TSM are having more success in the second round robin is that I think Hyper really upped his play. He's starting to actually work with Yurson, his support. Maybe that swap between Shenyi and Yurson kind of helps with that, forcing him to work with 2 different players. And he is not getting caught out as much. He is taking better paths throughout the game, not putting himself so far behind to pull off ganks. And I think him being on better footing has really been the biggest reason why TSM has seen more success in the second round robin. And we get to see more moments where the carries of Viper and Instinct on the squad really pop off because they aren't getting so far behind in the early game.
It will be tough, though, for Hyper in this matchup specifically, because when we look at the opposition on the Rift, Dignitas Academy, XU, this jungler is kind of the engine of their team. So while, yes, Hyper has been coming into his own, he's doing well, XU has still been having a relatively impressive split here.
And I think the good thing for XU, I mean, this is a player, once again, rookie in Academy. I think that he had a lot of excitement around him because when you watch this guy play the Lee Sin, it's like, holy cow, like, this guy's a rookie in Academy. Like, he looks like he has so much potential to really do great things at the next level. I think the one thing that's missing in XU's gameplay, historically, it's been his champion pool. And he has worked really hard on expanding that, especially the past few weeks. We've seen more Hecarim out of him. We've seen success on the Volibear. He's tried to play the Udyr. These are all very different looks for XU, has traditionally been this Lee Sin, Graves, Nidalee, Rek'Sai, all about the gankers and, you know, snowballing himself and his team ahead that way. Now that he's kind of combining that with another play style and also looking all right doing that, I think this is a good growth stage for XU. It's really good to see him try and push his boundaries, continue to, you know, push himself as a player, and we're gonna have to see if he can come up big in this series because he needs to win these games versus TSM if Dignitas want to control their own destiny in making that top 6.
Exactly. XU, we call him the engine of the team. Darkwings and Spawn have been stepping up big as of late as well. Let's see if it's going to be enough to get Dignitas across that top 6 finish line that they are currently just under or tied for at the very least, because we're ready for big and ban. So I'm going to pass it back over to Magical and Cubby. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Steve. We'll see you after the break so that we can get to our halftime show. But before then, it is game 1 of the second best of 2 that we have here on the Face It TV stream. And I'm curious to see how this is going to unfold between the two teams, especially because TSM, they have that technically sub-mid laner coming in from TSM itself into the Academy with Takeover having joined up with the LCS team. So, Triduo, I want to see how they play around this player as well, not just Viper.
Yeah, if you guys missed the update from TSM last week, of course, you did see Takeover playing in LCS. They went 1-1 in their games. I think the Takeover was a massive carry for them in the second one, the one they won as well. Kaidoa playing in Academy. We saw pretty much 2 games of Ahri, 1 game at Corki. They won the Corki game where he was pretty influential in that win. A lot of the reasoning for that TSM gave us is, you know, lessen the pressure. Give Kaidoa some more games in Academy, kind of like what they did with Shenyi as well. As I think TSM as a whole are trying to figure it out, right? They're 10th place in LCS, 10th place in Academy, seeing some of these changes as they try to up their teams as an org. And frankly, for Academy, I think that they have upped their play. I just think a lot of that has actually come from Hyper and Yurson working together better as a duo, not getting outplayed on the map as much by other jungle support duos, and that's done a lot of justice and a lot of favors to TSM.
As we get into the champion select, we see there's Star Marksman of Zeri and Jinx, both banned by TSM, not wanting to give those over to Spawn. We've also seen, just in the last series, what happens when you leave Zeri open twice. Very powerful champion that can set the pace for a lot that your team needs. But here, it's still that Aphelios. Aphelios left open. Of course, he's one of the 3 premier marksmen that we've seen in the meta where if it's open, you're still going to take it. And it's answered by not just the Tahm Kench, but Varus as well.
And I like this setup for TSM. I think that Varus, especially the lethality Varus, is something that a lot of people have kind of forgotten about into Aphelios. You can beat Aphelios with range, and that's exactly what TSM are trying to do with this lethality Varus. Now, if XU is going to respond with Udyr, I like this. I mean, this is a way just to stat check that Varus and give your Aphelios this big, beefy front line that TSM has to get through. And if they want to give Aphelios some more protection, I think that they could easily go for something. You can take Thresh historically, but I think you could even take something like a Braum here. Plays okay in the Tahm Kench. You can prevent some of the poke from Varus if you want to match support and hide the rest of your roster.
Oh.
Not going to be the Braum. Said it's going to be the Rakan. This is really good against Tahm Kench too, as if, you know, they swallow up the Varus, you can still get the 2-for-1 charm combo if you do time it up right. Something that JJ has played rather well. So now we're going to see if Hyper decides to respond with the jungle. Hecarim, the most common counter in the Udyr, is off the table.
And the Trundle is going to be the secondary choice for Hyper. I was curious whether that was going to be Volibear or Trundle here. Going for Trundle. I personally like Trundle. I think that he offers a lot for teams. especially if you're really good at placing those pillars, you can deny a lot of entrances for XU and JJ.
It is some dueling power and the ability to steal stats away from Udyr later, but the first couple clears, Udyr murders Trundle in clear speed. And if you find the Trundle can somewhat duel, but Udyr is going to win that, especially early on. So I want to see if Dignitas can maybe set up for something like a double crab. I know they aren't going to have priority bot, but it is something that could be relevant as we move through the rest of pick ban. I think something notable that's off the table still is that Gwen. As Gwen, has seen some changes. We are on patch 12.5. We did not see her in the last series as she was on the ban list, but that is still up. The other reason I want to highlight it, Akali's taken off the table. That is historically one of the counters to Gwen. So maybe Dignitas is setting up for that for Eclipse. Whereas the Silas and Azir bans,
I don't mean to interrupt you. You had you're talking excellent, smart things and words, but I just checked the notes. Gwen was left open in the last series, both games.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised by that. Cause when you said that, I'm like, wait a minute. Did we actually see Gwen? And we didn't. And here, we're seeing technically a top lane ban towards Viper, but that's also a mid lane ban towards Kaido as well. With the Corki, then Silas and Azir. Lots of mid lane focus here.
I think we could just see a default to Ori. Now, this patch, Gwen, she did lose attack range, and that is quite, or on her E, that is quite a bit of her power in trades. So, maybe one of the reasons we aren't seeing her. The Akali ban tells me that it is something that Dignitas might be setting up for. Now, on the flip side, for TSM, Kaido, I did tease maybe default to Orianna. So it's going to be a default to Victor. So a little bit more poke range and some more late game damage coming out of TSM, which honestly, paired up with this Lethality Varus and a Trundle, I think they desperately need. And we'll have to see what Eclipse is setting up for on the top side. As I did tease the Gwen, but that Tryndamere, that split push option, it's still on the table, and that looks to be the option for what we think should be Eclipse's champion. Could be put mid for Darkwings, but would not be surprised if we see Darkwings maybe take something like a Cinder here. I know you're against the Tom Kench, but that would really provide this big front line for Aphelios to have.
They already got the Tom Kench. They already got Rakan on the other side. I'm looking at this one, and actually, I'm surprised by this. So I was looking at the Tryndamere as being that flex, but it's not like you can hold that top. Right. I was not expecting it. Like, you don't have that flex for very long since you have to draft your last champion here anyways. It's going to show where he is. So it's Darkwings on a Tryndamere, Gragas top lane, and we also saw last game how good a Gragas can be, even if I'm not a big fan of it. He's a big meatball that doesn't really move too much in that top lane.
You can get the 2-for-1, again, with the Tom Kench sheet. It's a very immobile backline. Now, it will be the Gnar for Viper, something that Viper plays very well, but this is a playable matchup for Gragas, and I think that, some of the flexibility being shown between the solo laners. This Tryndamere for Darkwings, this is his 13th unique champion.
Wow.
Something that we really credit the Darkwings for, his flexibility coming from Amateur. Good to see that coming out here. And you can see already in that mid lane matchup, Kaido swapping from Teleport to Ghost. You got to prepare to go up against this Tryndamere and match those Ghosts. And we'll see if Dignitas can utilize the early priority that Tryndamere can give you once he gets like level 3-4 to really make plays and make room for this Udyr who does dominate Trundle in the first couple clears of the game. I like this setup for Dignitas. I think they can get a lot done between Darkwings and XU. Try and get up in the face of TSM early.
So then flipping the script and looking at TSM, what is their strength? They got a lot of poke from both Victor and from Varus, but they also have pretty good side lanes out of that Gnar.
I actually think that TSM, it really is like 2 AD damage sources coming out of Dignitas in the Tryndamere and the Aphelios. I mean, they're going to be doing the vast majority of the damage. And you have all the poke in the world with a Varus and a Victor. So I think if Dignitas doesn't get ahead early and try and snowball and play this with this Gragas like it's a death ball, actually, even with the scaling marksman advantage being on the side of Dignitas, I think that TSM have some good options as this game moves forward.
All right, well, curious to see if they're going to hold the line in the early game, not really give up these advantages towards Dignitas in this first game as we load up onto the Rift. This is our second best of 2 series here. It is week 8, super week to end off the regular season of spring 2022.
And all eyes early. I know before the draft, talking a lot about Viper and XU. Viper with the counter pick on the Gnar. This is a champion where when he was playing with No Org, the team that won Proving Grounds last year, spring 2021, it was his most played champion, and he had an 80% win rate on it. Now, that is amateur games. That does include Proving Grounds, where, you know, they had to beat all the academy teams to end up winning all of that. Viper's Gnar, we haven't seen too much of it this year. He only has 2 plays on it. I want to see if he is able to utilize this counter pick to the fullest extent. It's a very common matchup that we're seeing, a little bit in LCS, even more in LCK. So Viper has to have a lot of footage to know how to play this one out. In his Gnar, it's always been fantastic.
That's why we talked about Viper in the first place. We looked at him as this top lane, the leader for TSM in a lot of their victories. The successes he's gotten in his lane, he's translated to other lanes, and Hyper as well, playing far, far and away better than he did at the beginning of the split, as it looked like he is on perfect form with Viper to have that Viper-Hyper duo.
And I think all eyes, I know I'm teasing Viper in the Gnar, but also a lot of early game importance, I think, going to be put on this Udyr. And I want to keep our eyes on Axio and his pathing, as he is going for the full clear. So looks like red to the Krugs. Udyr can full clear before that 315 marker, just about at it, and use that level 4 to hopefully, if you're Dignitas, set up for a double crab. I think that's going to be the game plan against Trundle, and I want to see if Axio can execute it. Now, Hyper starting on the opposite, or I should say mirrored side of the map, so him starting top side, whereas Axio starting bot. This should enable that he's at least going to get most of his camps, but will be a level short when the crab spawns. So I want to see if Axio can maybe take advantage of that.
Well, will be hard, because when we look at bot lane, we look at top lane, there's TSM that have the early priority. It's only mid lane that we expected the Tryndamere versus Victor matchup, where Dark Wings has a bit of an upper hand on Kaido, and he's even getting a bit of vision down to help out XU. Maybe look for that play, but he's on the wrong side of the map. He's committing to the full clear.
And you can see Kaido, as long as he is not pressured mid, you are able to pick up a lot of farm as Victor. Just the danger gets when this Tryndamere hits 6, and if the enemy jungler comes mid, it's tough to deal with. You're going to have to burn summoner spells defensively. And once Tryndamere hits 6, of course, that tower doesn't matter anymore because he can go invulnerable. So those are the windows that Kaido is going to have to play around. Once again, really like the scaling advantage for TSM moving forward. I think that this Victor Gnar will be tough for Dignitas to deal with. And Dignitas going to have to either play a death ball with Eclipse and Darkwings finding angles, or they're going to have to make sure that Darkwings gets so far ahead that he cannot be dealt with in the side lane.
At the moment, Kaido pushing back the ebb and flow of lane states when you get an early shove, pushing back towards you. It's even frozen right outside of turret aggro for Darkwings, and he aggresses on Kaido. He's
Ghost.
Aggressive here, goes for Ghost
Hyper's here.
with the gravity well, but he is now stunned. Has to go away from this fight because Hyper was nearby, and look at where XU is. He's not near to flash away, but Darkwings is now pillared up. They're chasing him, kiting back. It's early onto the game. He doesn't have the invulnerable fate he can utilize here, but he's taken down for first blood. Well, Viper is also getting aggressive on the top side. He's trying to kite back. He goes Mega just in time, throws a boulder at XU, but he still dies nonetheless.
Really well played by Kaido in the mid lane. This is so important for TSM. They got both summoner spells out of Darkwings. Victor lives, able to fix this wave state. The Victor being ahead in this matchup is very important. Dignitas, they do punch back on the top side, but I think overall, TSM will take that trade as, speaking of trades, Yerson looking for one on the bot side. Not going to find it. We will go to replay, see what happened off our screens. Eclipse, Viper, actually you can see that trinket that Viper dropped. It is in the river. XU went to the top tribe rush to get around it. Caught Viper trying to crash that wave. Really nice play from the jungler Dignitas to make sure that Viper gets put behind early.
But Viper held on to his flash that entire time. He knew he was dead. He knew there was no way out. So he held on to the summoner. So that way he can still fight back pretty well against Eclipse, especially once he even outs the experience.
And for XU, that kill went to him. We said that Udyr, big advantage against Trundle in the first couple of clears. Both junglers have found a successful play. I do want to give a lot of credit to Kaido and how he played that matchup in the mid lane, baiting in Darkwings, and Darkwings not early committing that flash, I think really hurt him in that 1v1. Once that gravity field connected, he was put in a really awkward position. Now, there are no sums on Kaido, and XU, we talked about his clearing advantage. He's going to utilize the mid pressure still from Darkwings to get up in the face of Hyper, steal away a camp, but no mid dive. So as long as this Udyr is the only one getting ahead, I think TSM are happy to live with that.
Yerson sees him on Gromp here. No crab. Getting a little joke in there for you.
Crabs are down.
Yeah, exactly. There's no crab. He doesn't even get the Gromp. Has to get out of there. A little worried about where Hyper is, especially because Bot lane had semi-reset. JJ had gone back, but he didn't realize Instinct had already recalled.
Now, I think XU might be using this to at least tease and pull the dragon.
Okay.
It did spot out Yurson. It is both bot lanes on a reset. Dignitas reset first. That means they're back out onto the map first. And XU clearing out that blast plant. That's enough vision, enough info for him to start at this dragon. Will be a first take for Dignitas. So XU still utilizing the power in the first couple clears of Udyr nicely. Picking up a nice neutral for free for his team.
Getting these early leads is going to help utilize that early priority you talked about with Udyr. How he's punishing Hyper, and there's only been the one play so far from Hyper. We need to see a little bit more action out of Hyper because they have great scaling, but they need to make sure they're not falling too far behind the members of Dignitas.
Now, we could be seeing another one as XU went up to this top crab. Meanwhile, this wave is a little bit shoved out for the side of Dignitas. Yurson going to remove the controller, and now they're going to find and engage, but that's canceled. Hyper's here.
Pillar, too, getting flashed, and it's a battle dance away from JJ, but getting flashed off the spawn means they can rinse and repeat.
And this wave can be frozen by TSM. This is a tough situation for Dig's bot lane, but meanwhile, XU, he is getting things on the other side of the map. He's taking away the red buff of Hyper, so continuing to get up in the face of the Trundle. And we are a minute away from the Rift Herald spawning. I think this is a really important objective for Dignitas this game because I still feel like they're the ones that have to snowball. And if you are able to pick that up, I think bot lane's the best place to put it. Try and get spawn out of this lane where Instinct can land a lot of harass and has more power in the trades with this lethality Varus. So I want to see if XU is able to utilize his strength to do that. But meanwhile, XU actually might be caught out. If we could, we got action 2 places at once.
Yeah, 2 places at one. Bot lane gets a lot of fight back. Looking for that stun with tongue lash, but body blocked by JJ to make sure that it's going to be a flash to secure it for Yurson.
Beautifully played by Yurson. JJ was trying to body block it, but he can't do that with a flash. JJ can't react. Spawn can't either. He's down sums. TSM find the 2v2 kill. And they also were able to force XU out of the top side jungle, so that takes away that first Rift Herald window for Dignitas. Big wins for TSM.
Yeah, that was a great play out of Yurson, too. The flash, because I mean, honestly, just looking at how that worked out, JJ was body blocking, and I thought there was no way he can get that stun on to spawn.
And this is a really good sign from Yurson because, you know, thinking back to him in 2021, he played 80% of his games on 4 champs. It was Nautilus, Rel, Leona, Alistar. So we know that he is a really talented player with his ability to find engages, find angles, and execute the mechanics on those supports, but we've always kind of pushed Yurson to get better at Enchantresses, get better at more defensive supports because he needs to round out his gameplay like that. His Tahm Kench has been really good. This is his 4th game playing it. Has been able to pick up a game with it. TSM, that's nice on a team that's struggling. That was a really good look from him. So showing off those mechanics on another champion, good sign of growth coming out of Yurson.
Plus the fact that he, before this, was 2-1 on the champion. Sure, not a huge thing, but it's a champion that he's shown growth on, like you said. And I find it even funnier because technically it's a defensive champion, but I don't think I've ever seen Yurson actually play Tahm Kench defensively. He plays it like we saw in that last play.
We had this discussion. Tahm Kench can be main engaged,
yeah.
right? You can do both if you're Yurson. Hey, really nice play by him to make sure that they were able to pick up that kill. Even got it over in his own pockets. Now has those plated steel caps to be looking a little bit stronger. And this is a really good game state for TSM. Tryndamere has not gotten out of control in the mid lane.
Nope.
XU at this point, yes, he is ahead, but you can live with that as an Udyr. And you're going to be stealing the stats later as a Trundle. And Dignitas have not been able to break any of the lanes. They can't put Tryndamere in a side lane yet. So I think overall, TSM are very happy with where the game state is at the moment. I think that their next steps are maybe just punishing Aphelios, you know, continuing to be down sums. That is a place that TSM can look to continue to punish. And keep in mind, that is the big damage source for Dignitas moving later into the game. So setting Aphelios behind, whenever you can do that, that's an even bigger win for TSM in this game.
And slowly but surely, they're doing thus. They're making sure that they have some of their powerful tools in the early game, like the Tryndamere, aren't doing as well into Kaido. In fact, he's got a bit of a CS lead over the Tryndamere, and he's able to force him out. Then bot lane, like you said, the late game scaling option that they have isn't doing it as well either. Spawn is struggling, and Yurson plays aggressively, even on this champ. That is a knock-up with the Chain of Corruption as well. They burst down poor JJ, even if XU's nearby. They've got a lot of damage. That's going to be a Moonlight Vigil, only absorbed by Tahm Kench. He's got thick skin available. Pops that, devours one, spits out, and it's another snipe for Instinct.
What a combo. Instinct having the presence of mind, charging up that arrow, taking down Spawn. That's a huge win for TSM as they find the 2-for-1 on the bot side. They also find the Rift Herald on the top side, denying Dignitas that potential early tower break as TSM continue to find wins across the map.
And a player we don't always get to talk about is Instinct for TSM. We always focus on Viper. We look at a lot of the different swaps they've had in support and mid lane. But Instinct is this player who I think he works so well with Yurasan because he has great target selection and understands the limits of each champion he's playing.
I just love this interaction. That spit last second from Yurasan, able to combo. Really good communication from these two. And Instinct, I mean, he is someone that we are excited about. You know, he is a rookie AD. I think that, you know, coming off Hunter Next, something that all the LCS third teams had in amateur last year, I think they all got the marksman position right. I think they all had good candidates. And the issue with Instinct is that he's been falling behind in lane. So him having a great laning phase here, another good sign of growth for Instinct. I know he has the winning match, but he's making good use of it. As meanwhile, TSM, this Hextech Dragon is on the Rift, and they have done a nice job at forcing Ghost out of XU, forcing them out of the bot river, and getting priority over this objective for themselves.
Exactly. I was about to say, because if you look at TSM, they can't really fight back at the moment. They're struggling to get the lane state back into an opportune time to see if they can peel for that Dragon. With a little bit of ebb and flow mid lane and bot lane, it is still Dignitas who have the first grabs onto this Dragon, even if TSM are nearby.
This is tough. If TSM win this fight, it's first brick and more for them. And I think Instinct at this point of the game, he's so strong. He already has the Prowler's Claw completed. Let's see if his ult connects.
Can't go
Will
in
be
just
Dragon,
yet.
what happens after?
That's what we're looking towards. They've got the flashes
That's
from
an ult.
spawn, but they've already got Dark Wings as well, bouncing him around with his own ult pop. They've got the damage coming in, and it's Gobble to keep one alive,
Nice
and they spit him back out for a kill for Kaido, with the rest of Dignitas now on the wrong side of the map. There goes a double kill that they got for Kaido, looking for Dark Wings, who doesn't have that ult anymore. He is caught in a bad spot. Even if he popped that Ghost and can blade out of there, it's not really looking too good for the side of Dignitas.
And even Darkwing's getting out, it's still a 2-for-1 for TSM. I think importantly, Hyper did go down, so we can't throw down the Rift Herald and make this a bot tower break. But TSM still walk away with a team fight win. And this is a team that we like the scaling of. And Dignitas is a really hard force from them. When you have your marksman this far behind, you're already staring down a Prowler's Claw, a level 8 poke Varus. He is so strong at this point of the game. And we just see how much work that TSM get to do. Also, really want to credit Yurasan, a beautiful eat on Kaido.
Yep.
But also Kaido, knowing that he had that Tom Ken sheet, he positioned really aggressively to get a lot of damage off at the start of that fight too. Just setting up things for TSM to knock them down as fight went further along. I think TSM's playing this game out really nicely. They have a 2K gold lead. I love the scaling they have as the game goes on. Pressure's on Dignitas to try and break these lanes and try and overload in the side. If they aren't able to do that, I think they're going to be losing these structures even faster and faster as TSM sieging on that mid-outer, get a couple plates for themselves.
And I love that play because it highlights the strength TSM have been able to grab for themselves out of Kaido. The fact that he's in a bad matchup into Tryndamere, yet they still can get a crash, get more plate gold for him, and being that it's a Victor, as we scale up into this game, his wave clear is going to be so absurd, Darkwings can no longer rotate around the map.
And they haven't been able to get Darkwings out of mid.
Wow.
And now Kaido just going to pick up the ult for free. Trade of ultimates, Darkwing's still able to get out, but Kaido, he gets to stick around, shoving another wave. And this is the danger of Dignitas. When you can't get that Tryndamere into the side lane, he doesn't have room now to push up mid anymore. Tryndamere is not being very useful at the moment, and Dignitas have no way to get him out. So overall, TSM, just a lot of credit to how they've played out this early game. And one of the consequences of Dignitas not using that Udyr to get ahead, not using that Udyr to help out his solo lanes that lose the matchup. And now we're seeing that come to fruition. TSM, they have pushed top, they have pushed mid, they have pushed bot from what they got in draft, and Dignitas don't have an answer.
Hell, even Hyper is just full-on invading, making a home for himself inside of XU's jungle where they can pop him like that. It's a killing spree for Kaido. Red buff is gone. This map is completely owned by TSM. They've bought up all the real estate.
And I love this from Hyper. A really good sign for him and Kaido. Credit due. I mean, whenever you have these swaps, it can be really tough to adapt to new players. Hyper, you know, this is Kaido's second week playing with Academy. That's a really good sign. Just, you know, knowing that you have mid-priority from Kaido, snowballing that, taking something away from XU, and now snowballing that into even more bot as they're looking.
Yeah, guess what? XU isn't up, but that TP is going to scare him off. And it's the quickness pop by JJ. Nice Devour with the bounce around coming in from the explosive cast, and now you got to escape. Yurson is on the wrong side, and look at where Darkwings is. They can chase down Tom Kench, catfish him, and pick up 2 kills bot.
And a big overextension coming out of TSM as Dignitas. They were able to punish. Viper will pick up this turret on their own, but I think this is really important. Slowing down Instinct, getting kills on Darkwings, and now maybe opening up the map to put Darkwings in a side lane. Dignitas desperately needed that.
Yeah, if we can take a look at that replay as well. Honestly, I think that was a good answer side of Dignitas because it looked like a great setup initially from TSM.
It's just really over-aggressive from Hyper. Hyper could have utilized the time that XQ was down to take his bot lane camps, get back out on the map, you know, nice farmed, ready to go. Instead, not respecting the TP, pushing for that play. Viper doesn't match. He is able to pick up the tower on his own, but I think that gave a lot of much-needed comeback gold to Dignitas. Now, Dig, they need 2 or 3 more of those plays, and coming out of replay, at least Hyper was able to bounce back and take this bot outer for himself, too.
Granted, you are right. They need a couple more plays, maybe like picking up Hyper in Darkwings. But the other thing that I'm looking at is the fact they already have 2 dragons. Both of the early dragons were picked up by Dignitas. They have potential, even if it's a Cloud Soul, that's still a massive objective. That's a lot of gold, essentially, that you're getting for your team. And it moves around that Udyr a lot more efficiently around the map if you can get the Soul with not a single dragon going over to TSM.
I think that Dignitas are in trouble, though. They're going for the Herald and Darkwings. He's caught. He's going to Gale Force, Pop Ghost. Will be able to get out. This is Dignitas going for the trade and not going for that Dragon Man Magical. They want the Rift Herald. They want to break some turrets and try and buy more space in the map for this Tryndamere.
Bit surprised. I thought they would try to make sure they could at least secure the Soul for themselves since they had this early lead. But letting the side of TSM, it is only their first Dragon, granted, and they get themselves this Rift Herald. It's what they can do to make sure they're overcoming some of the weaknesses they have late game. They have some scaling on their side. But TSM, we both have said it, that we really like a lot of their scaling, especially Kaido, who's 3-0 on Victor.
And now, I mean, Kaido, with this Everfrost and Lichbane, I don't think there's any way that in the 1v1, Tryndamere can get on him alone. I mean, you have the Ghost to match. You get a little bit of bonus move speed from the Witchbane. Not to mention the bonus move speed that Victor has in his kit at this point from having that Q evolve, soon the W evolves, and then you get the slows too.
Yeah.
And it is one of the issues with Victor is that if this pick doesn't get set behind, if he just is able to cruise into the later stages of the game, he becomes so difficult to play around and deal with. And Dignitas, they do have some tools, you know, with the Gragas, with, you know, Udyr trying to stat check, but I think that Kaido is too far ahead at this point, and I don't know how Dignitas break this. I mean, I think it has to be a huge play coming out of Eclipse on this Gragas, and Dignitas, I don't think there's ever going to be a way that they're able to get numbers on the map just because TSM at this point, they win the sides. So Dignitas are forced into these overload plays, and they aren't able to find anything. TSM farming out more lanes. They're really happy with what's going on right now.
Popping Rift Herald in mid lane. The chase from Darkwings on the other side with the quickness on top of Hyper. That's getting a lot out of him at least. They might be able to get the flash, but they turn their attention. They split up their focus. Instead of just taking down Trundle, they try to do too much at once. This is allowing TSM to completely recollapse on top of them. They've got a lot of damage, and there's not that much left for Dignitas. Looking at Darkwings first, focusing him out, trying to get his ult, but they pop him before the Hyper came in from Viper to take down Darkwing.
Oh, the Rang. Darkwings didn't see it, wasn't able to press R. Now TSM, they have the power play. They're able to push back mid as the attempt from Dignitas. We said it. I mean, TSM, their ability to just kite out, wait things out. Eclipse was never able to find that barrel to engage. Now we're going to have to see Dignitas on the re-engage.
That's a big burst of damage from Spawn, but not enough to actually take anyone down. A lot of that attention had been put on to Hyper, who's still fine. It's Trundle. It's Trundle, even with an item, is pretty damn tanky.
And, I mean, also with TSM, if they're in these front-to-backs, Mad Magical, that is the dream if you're Victor, right? Just throw the lasers out. No one has any flanks. You do so much damage. You have so much range and so much crowd control once you get that W evolve, which I believe Kaido, if he doesn't have at the moment, is very close to netting on this Victor. It is so difficult to deal with Victor at this point. Hex core is totally completed. Shout out to our observer for highlighting that one. I don't know how Dignitas are able to deal with this if it's not, like, for the flanks. And they don't have prio insides at the moment. So it's really going to be, I think, it's got to be just a miracle play from Eclipse JJ. And TSM is just business as usual. Let's see if they can execute this cleanly.
Watching to see if that's going to happen for Dignitas' sake, because that is going to be a Hail Mary play with the scaling that has come through where the gold has been allocated as well for TSM. Hyper might only have a little bit of a lead over Eclipse, but look at Kaido. That is a massive lead in what is supposed to be a counter pick for Darkwings.
And I mean, a lot of credit, like, I think it really goes to Hyper and Kaido. I mean, the way that the two of these players worked around in the mid game, Hyper pretty much won Kaido's lane for him by showing at the right time against Darkwings. And then Kaido and Hyper also worked together later to get that kill on Exio in the red buff.
Yep.
I know that Hyper's still down a lot of CS, but who cares? You're Trundle, right? Your Victor's up, your Nar's up because no one had any action in that lane, so he just won over time. Hyper did his job on the Trundle, and now we're seeing Dignitas feel the consequence of that because their game plan was slowed down. They can't get on the map. TSM are taking everything. Another inner turret falls for themselves, and TSM keep on moving forward.
And I always find it funny when we highlight one player and then it's another player on the team that ends up standing out. For TSM, Viper is playing well. Don't get me wrong. But Kaido, this player that came over from the developmental league in the LPL to play initially for TSM, struggling a bit there. Wow, okay! I didn't expect that you just pop him like that with no ult burn by Darkwings.
Viper finding another kill on the Trinimir, who
never mind, Viper. Okay. I'm gonna applaud you more. Good.
There we go.
Viper.
Viper wanted it. Maybe Darkwings. That's second R that we haven't been able to connect. So that's an oops. And meanwhile,
nice flash.
Oh, Gale Force forward from spawn. It's gonna force the flash. That little bit of overaggression there from Instinct.
Possible, right? No, okay, not impossible. Anyways, like I was saying before, if guys let me speak, please. Kaido, this guy who came over from the developmental league in the LPL, struggled a little bit on TSM, but that also can be chalked up to a bit of nerves. We're seeing that he is really growing here in NA and looking what we expected of him when he initially joined TSM. As he slowly gets more comfortable, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him get back into the LCS, take that spot away from Takeover, who has also been performing incredibly well in Academy. So it will be a tough decision, but I definitely see the strengths that this TSM Academy now has.
And I mean, as this game kind of goes further out of control, this should be a free dragon for TSM. I think it is like worth highlighting. Some of the difficulties. I mean, you're a young player coming into a new country where you don't speak the main language, and if you're on a team like TSM, I mean, the pressure's on from the start.
Exactly.
Right? And I think that this opening up for Kaido, it's a good way that we get to see, why this guy was brought over. His mechanics, his laning, it's really good.
Okay.
But we do have to pause because Dignitas, we said they're down bad this game. They're trying to force this Baron, and it is at 5K.
They got a lot of damage on Instinct as well. He can't really join in. He can't show face. That's the quickness pop. Now they can turn their attention. They've got a lot of damage on the back line, but they still have the art from Darkwings. He's gobbled up, and it's JJ who's first killed off. They got the kill on the other side for Instinct, but they still got to worry about inside of the pit. The Baron secured by Hyper. Dignitas, Baron flipped it all, and it's tossed right back to TSM.
We kept on talking about how this game was spiraling out of control. Dignitas were struggling to find angles, and they just decided to send it there. TSM able to rotate in time. They get the kills. They continue to push this game forward, and TSM continue to cruise.
And that keeps TSM in the conversation for top 6. The Hail Mary, the last-minute one scenario play, winning every single game. This is the way to start it all off.
All right, well, they need 100 Thieves to lose some too.
Hey, you still got to win the games first.
Yeah, the only way they control their own destiny is going 6-0. And I mean, regardless of that, this game has been a much better look for TSM. The fact that it isn't just a one-week thing where, Hyper's performing a bit better, where Hyper and Yurson are working together to make plays on the map. We're seeing Hyper now work with Kaido, work with Yurson. These were things that we were not seeing from TSM. They are our 10th place team in the standings with 9 wins. And as these guys continue to kind of gel a little bit more, play together, we're seeing them pick up more wins, rightfully so, with this improved play. It's a good look for TSM and a really good sign moving into Proving Grounds, regardless of whether or not they make top 6.
And it's funny because when you look at Proving Grounds last year, you have similar stories for bottom teams. Golden Guardians Academy didn't have the best standing going into Proving Grounds in spring or summer, but they made miracle runs. Looking at TSM, they're setting themselves up for that similar story. They might have to play in the play-ins even if they go 6-0 in this week. That's still a great way to battle into the Proving Grounds, play these play-in stages, and look like a dominant team that can run a miracle.
One laser from Kaido's Victor gets spawned at half, and that's going to be the bot inhibitor falling for TSM. We'll see if they push for any more. We have to look out for Instinct.
They're just
going to
gonna
press R. Yeah, that is what they're gonna try and play off of here for the engaged.
Dignitas are letting them take their base
There it is.
completely. They're doing nothing.
no.
They're standing back and watching, but Hyper taking up the turret actually makes it so they can turn it around. They get a little bit of damage on Dexia, and look at what Darkwings is doing on the backline, but he's gobbled up. They made sure,
Oh,
and Viper, he's huge. Same with Kaido. They forced back Dignitas, and they've got an ace for the team to end it off with a triple kill for Kaido.
A really good game for Kaido, increasing that confidence, and also huge props to Hyperman. That hover mid at level 4, that is what ensured that the victor was going to come out on top of the matchup, ensured that this big carry they had moving on later was going to be set up for success, and Kaido just cashed it in as TSM. That was one of the better games we've seen out of this team all year for our 10th place squad. Maybe they're coming together just at the right time.
Hey, what better time than going into Proving Grounds, right? This is the time to turn it all up. Even if you have to play in this play-in stage, this has shown how much growth this roster has had over just the spring split. Makes me excited to look at what they might accomplish in Proving Grounds if they can be our next iteration of the Miracle Run team.
And I mean, for TSM, I mean, one of the reasons that, you know, they are in 10th, they have struggled, and I think that in the first round robin, I think their biggest issue was just Hyper, you know, looked lost on the map, wasn't working with his teammates. We're starting to see that now, and I think that Hyper's gone from someone who was one of the weaker players in Academy. If he continues to do this, someone that, you know, we actually have to start recognizing a little bit more in the jungle is, you know, not being a liability but an asset. He had a fantastic game there. That CS against Udyr doesn't matter. The way that he was able to impact his solos, impact that mid lane, and then use that to get up in the face of Udyr later. I think it was one of the better games we've seen out of Hyper this split on a champ that we don't know Hyper for. Really good sign for TSM as we get closer to Proving Grounds, and really good sign from Hyper just to see him really upgrading his play as we move forward and get deeper into the season.
The growth. That's what I love about seeing this from Hyper. And this is what Academy is for. It's to help develop these players to get them into this position to look where they started in the season where people kind of were like, nah, not even caring about Hyper, to now we have to focus on him. He's doing so well.
It's a really nice game.
It is. It's a great game.
Also, your son on the Tom Kench, 3-1, a champion that he didn't play at all last year, right? Another sign of growth from TSM. So even our 10th place team in Academy showing some good signs as we get closer and closer to Proving Grounds.
And when we get back from break, we'll hopefully break down this game a little bit further, but we're going to toss to that break. Now we'll have our halftime show with our wonderful, I almost said beautiful and wonderful at the same time, but you know, that's a good way to describe Kangas. Make sure you stay tuned.